Welcome back to my photography journey. My name's Steve and thank you for joining me today. It's now been 2 months since I got this, and this is the Nikon Z30. It was my present to myself when I reached 500 subscribers. So once again, thank you very much for subscribing. I treated myself to it so that I had two cameras, one for filming myself while I'm using the other one, and also because they're slightly different and I like the look of both of them. So I have now had this, like I said, for 2 months, so I think it's time to do a bit more of an in-depth comparison between this and the Z5 that I'm currently filming this on, that I've had for 18 months now, maybe 2 years. So let's start with a quick comparison between the two of them. And this lets me put up some nice charts and some tables and lets me play around in DaVinci Resolve a bit. So here we go. The Z30. So this is a DX frame size, and that means it's an APS-C sensor. So it's smaller than an FX or full frame camera. It's got 21 megapixels and it has got a single SD card, and this is UHS 1 speed. The frame rates that we can use on this are 1/4000th of a second up to 30 seconds. On the other side of things, it can do 11 frames per second in its fastest burst mode. The ISO is the same on both cameras. You can go all the way down to 100 or all the way up to 51,200. They can both film 4K video. The difference is that there's no crop with this. So there is a crop in terms of full frame to APS-C, so FX to DX, and that is about 1.5 times. So a 35mm lens on a crop sensor will be around about 50mm equivalent to a full frame camera. And that 1.5 times crop is all the crop that there is when you're filming 4K video on this, whereas the Nikon Z5 has a 1.7 times crop when you're filming 4K video. So it's a bigger crop. So even though it's a bigger sensor, you get more of a crop using the Z5 than you do the Z30. In terms of slow motion video, you can go up to 120 frames a second on the Z30, only 60 frames a second on the Z5, both at 1920 by 1080. So full HD. They've both got a big LCD screen on the back, which you can use for focusing to see what's going on, and they're basically the same. The Z5 one's slightly bigger, but you don't really notice it in day-to-day use. They both have USB-C ports, they both have HDMI out, although it's a micro one on here and a mini one on the Z5, so that does make a slight difference, but nothing too much. They both have Wi-Fi, they both have Bluetooth. The battery is a bit smaller on this one. Obviously, the camera is a bit smaller, so the battery is a bit smaller, so it doesn't last quite so long. So in terms of weight, this without a lens is about 405 grams and the Z5 is 675. So a fair difference between them, but when you're holding them, when you've got a lens on, you don't particularly notice that. Although when you've got a small lens on this one, it is a nice small package to carry around. And this is how big the Z5 is. In terms of price, the recommended retail price in the UK for these, the Z30 is £689 and the Z5 is £12.99. So quite a big difference in price between them. One of the biggest differences between them, like I said, is that frame size. So the Z5 is an FX or full frame. The Z30 is an APS-C or DX sized. And what does that mean? It's not the number of megapixels that the camera has, it's the actual physical size of the sensor that's going to be capturing our images, whether it's photos or video. In terms of actual physical size, the DX frame size is 24 by 16 millimeters, and the FX is 24 by 36 millimeters. So that's a bit of a basic overview, but let's go into a bit more detail. How do things compare on the photo side? As it's nearly December, I've got 1 or 2 Christmas decorations up in the house. So this train is quite a good subject to compare the photography of both cameras. I used the 35mm f1.8 lens. So this is an FX lens. So like I said, when there's an FX lens on a DX camera, a crop factor is applied. So this 35mm lens on the Z5 is 35mm focal length. On the Z30, it's about 52 millimeters. And you can see that in these pictures, the slightly different framing of them. The actual image quality is hard to tell the difference between the two cameras. The lens is far more important than the cameras in this respect. But what you do get with the Z30 is, because of that crop factor, you get that bit more of a reach with the lens. So if you're at 200mm on the Z5, a 200mm lens on the Z5, that same lens at 200mm on the Z30 would now be a 350mm. So you get a lot more reach with the APS-C size sensor with the Z30. And generally you'll find that these telephoto lenses, to get that kind of reach on a full frame camera, are quite expensive. So being able to do it without losing any megapixels on a smaller camera body is a win, I think. Depends what you're taking pictures of, obviously. One of the biggest differences between the two is the frame rate at which you can take pictures. So this doesn't make any difference to landscape photography. But when I'm taking pictures of the dogs, having 11 frames per second on the Z30 means that more of my pictures are going to be in focus. I'm going to be able to catch things that I wouldn't be able to catch at the 4.5 frames per second that we get on the Z5. And just to demonstrate what that sounds like, this is 11 frames per second. So I'm bound to capture something when I'm taking that many pictures. Now this is something that's actually very subjective, because when I first got the Z5, that was far and away quicker than any camera that I had ever used before. The buffer never fills up. I could take plenty of pictures with that, and have done. Over the last couple of years, I never really realized why I would want any more. But now that I've got the 11 frames per second, it does feel quite slow when I then go back to it. 11 frames per second, it's not necessary, but is nice to have, that's for sure. I also record quite a lot of video, these videos, and I use these cameras for that as well. So let's do a little bit of a comparison on the video side of things. The first thing that struck me was the battery life. The battery life on the Z30 is terrible in comparison to the Z5. It will run out before I finish filming what I need to film, and that's not ideal, is it? However, both cameras have USB-C power delivery. So what you can do is, in the side here, we have got a USB-C port, and that means that I can plug in a power bank or plug it into the mains, and it will basically never run out of battery. If it's on a power bank, yes, that will gradually decrease. The battery in here will decrease, but you won't ever actually run out of power until they're both depleted. So you get a lot longer runtime than you would do otherwise. And obviously if you plug it into the mains, then it will just keep going. So when I'm filming with my camera on a tripod, I generally have it plugged in anyway. For example, my Z5 at the moment has got a USB-C cable running out to a plug socket so that I don't have any problems running out of battery. The benefit of this is that when I then go to film something that's not on a tripod, I can then go out and know that my battery will be fully charged, or at least nearly fully charged. So as I said, the Z5 has got a 1.7 times crop on it when you are filming in 4K. I like to film in 4K because I think the images are a lot nicer. But what that means is my 35mm lens that I've got on there right at this moment is actually, once it's gone through that crop factor, a 60mm lens. So that's quite a big difference. So it makes the field of view a lot smaller on here than it should be for this lens. So in terms of comparison of video, this is now on the Z30. I've got the Z5 here. It does feel quite big now, but what I want to demonstrate is this different field of view. So this is with the same 35mm f1.8 lens. The tripod is in the same place, the camera is in the same place, and this is the field of view. So you can see slightly more with this lens. So like I said, the crop factor on here is 1.5 times. When you're filming 4K video on here, it's 1.7 times. So considering the crop from FX to DX is 1.5 times, then I'm gaining a 10mm difference. So it's going to be about 50mm on here. So about 10mm difference in the field of view. So it's actually better on the Z30 than it is on the Z5. When you're filming in 1080p, there's not any crop applied to either camera. Yes, I could do that as much as I wanted, but I do prefer the 4K images. So on the Z5, you can film at 60 frames a second in 1080p. and then you can slow that down when it's in your final video, so you get some slow motion. You can film up to 120 frames a second on this one in the same HD quality, so you can slow that down twice as much, so it actually looks a lot nicer when it's slowed down, and the slow motion to it is just a bit smoother. Now, they both have LCD screens on. The one on the Z30 is more advanced. You can fold it out, you can twist it, and you can even bring it all the way around to the front, so I could be filming myself with it without any problems. That also folds back, so then I can have it on the screen and be able to do whatever I want on there. And if you want it out to the side, you can have it over your head, down low, and you just move the LCD screen to get it where you want it. So you can be a lot more flexible with the different angles that you're shooting at, whether it's stills, whether it's video, with the Z30 than you can with the Z5. And then when you're using the Z5, the LCD screen on the back doesn't have quite the same amount of options. So you can tilt it down, you can tilt it up, and that's it. So you can go down to that angle, or you can go up to flat, but there's no twisting out, there's no turning around that you can do with the Z30. So it's definitely less helpful than the Z30. But before I got the Z30, this was absolutely fine. And these are the flappy bits on the Z5. Can be quite annoying. The Z30 doesn't make nearly as much noise. Having that flexibility with the LCD screen actually makes more of a difference than I was expecting. I've used it far more than I thought I would. And what's also quite good is that when you're recording video on this, you get a red box around the LCD screen to show you that recording has started. So whether you're facing the camera away from you, you can see that on there. If you want to film yourself, you can put it so that you're looking at that screen as well. And then also on the front here is a little light which lights up red when you are filming as well, so that you know, even if that screen's back, you can see the red light on there to know that you're filming, which again is very useful to know, because it wouldn't be the first time that I'd thought I was recording when actually I wasn't. So in terms of physical size, the Z30 is quite small. It's also got these better attachment points at the side so that they don't wriggle. That means it's quieter, it's less annoying basically. The biggest benefit to the small size is when you attach a small lens. So for example, my 24-50, which is over here. So if I attach a small lens, let's do that now in fact. And that's the sensor size. Just attach this one on. So to put the lens on, you line up the two white dots and twist it into place, and there we go. So this is one of my smallest lenses, this is my smallest camera, and so with this lens it is a really compact setup. So this is a 24-50 on a full frame, so that's around about 35 to 75 I think, if it was a full frame. And it's a nice small package, you can carry it around with you nice and easily. You can pop it in a bag, you can use a clip to attach it to something. It's nice and small, doesn't weigh much, so easy to take and use. And let's face it, that's the most important thing, being able to get out with your camera and actually use it. So the Z5 isn't a lot bigger, but you can definitely feel the difference between the two when you swap from one to the other. There is a downside, obviously, to the size, and that's the controls. So there aren't as many controls on the back of this as there are on the Z5. The most notable thing is probably the lack of a viewfinder at the top. So everything that you do has to be on the LCD screen. You can't have another view of looking at anything. The lack of LCD screen doesn't really bother me. What has bothered me is on the top here, we have got the ISO and the video record buttons. They are a different way around on this camera compared to the Z5. They're switched, so I keep pressing the wrong one. Whichever camera I'm on, I press the wrong one, which is really annoying. I guess it is something that I'll get used to. The more that I use them, the more that I switch between them, I will remember which camera has which button in which place, but it is annoying. The only other button that's really missing is the joystick on the back for moving like that AF area or going through menus and things like that, but it's touchscreen, so that's not a huge difference. Oh, one more thing, the AF on button on the back of the Z5 is how I generally focus. It's the equivalent of half pressing the shutter button, but what you can do is set up the buttons so that you can customize them. So I've customized the auto exposure lock button to be an AF on button, so it does the same job as that button would on my Z5. So at the moment, I don't actually have any Nikon DX size lenses. The closest one I've got is my 7 Artisans 35mm f1.4, which is what I'm using at the moment. Now, this is a manual focus lens, so getting the focus right could be a bit more tricky. So if I'm leaning too far back, if I'm leaning too far forward, it may not actually be in focus, and that is the biggest downside that I've got with this lens. The fact that it's also 1.4 aperture means that it has a very narrow depth of field, so getting the right part in focus at the right time is tricky, particularly when I'm sat here and the camera's over there. So probably not my smartest buy for video, but it might be quite good for some photos. So I'm going to take it out and take a few pictures with it to give a bit more of a comparison. So let's have a look at those now. So there isn't a big difference in terms of the menu between the two different cameras. The settings are about the same, the menus are laid out the same, but there are a few small differences, so let's have a look at those now. The Z5 doesn't have the AF-A or auto AF that the Z30 has, so that's automatically switching between continuous and single autofocus depending on what the subject is. And then for the AF kind of auto mode, this has more options in terms of animal and people, whereas the Z5 doesn't have those options. The Z5 does have vibration reduction built into the actual body, whereas the Z30 doesn't, so that's something that you can turn on and off in the camera. The Z5 also has an autofocus assist illumination, which can help with focusing in slightly darker situations. Again, the Z30 doesn't have that. In its place is that red tally light that shows you when it's recording. You've got more options on the Z30 for a grid on the LCD screen. You can have it 3x3 or 4x4, whereas on the Z30 it's always 3x3. One of them has focus peaking and one of them has highlight peaking. I can't remember which way around it is, so I will show it on screen now. And the other thing with the Z5 is that you can clean the image sensor. You can press a button and it will give the image sensor a bit of a shake in order to get off any big bits of dirt or dust. And I assume that that's something to do with vibration reduction, because that allows the sensor to move slightly as well. So I assume that those two settings are linked. So in conclusion, I really like both of these cameras. I love how small and compact this Z30 is. I love being able to film 4K with a bigger frame of view. I really enjoy being able to shoot at 11 frames per second. So the Z5 also has things that I really enjoy about it. I prefer the slightly bigger size. I like having the viewfinder on there. The vibration reduction built into the camera is also very useful. The other thing with the Z5 is having the 2 SD cards and a bigger battery. It just gives you a bit more flexibility and gives you a bit more peace of mind when you're out taking pictures. Your battery won't run out and you've got a backup copy of all the pictures that you take. So maybe they'll combine all these features into the Z5 too. So hopefully that will be out soon and that will answer all my questions. But do I use one more than the other? Not really. I just tend to grab the one that I haven't used recently. So whether it's the Z5 or the Z30, the one that I haven't used for a few days, that's the one that I will grab and take out. I like them both equally. I've not been in a situation where I've been out and thought, oh, I wish I had whatever the other camera was. So yeah, I like them both. The fact that one is nearly twice as much as the other, that's probably the biggest thing that sets them apart. The Z5 is a lot more expensive, but it's also a bit older, so you might find some more deals on it. I highly rate both of these cameras, and I will continue to use them for a long time yet. So let me know if you have any experience with one or the other, if you prefer one to the other. And don't forget to subscribe so you can see more on the differences between the two as I use them over the next few months. And also there'll be other things coming on the channel soon. I've got a lens that I've rented that will be arriving fairly soon, and that is something that I'm excited about. So you'll see some bits and pieces on that as well. But other than that, I hope you've learned something with this comparison, and I'll see you again next week on my photography journey. So have a great week. Bye.